You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts John Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Prosper in the Kingdom. This is your host, John C., with the ever-amazing Wendy Lee. Wendy, how are you doing today?
Good. Doing great. Loving the sunshine. Happy to be here.
I know. I'm so excited. We're in full swing baseball mode. Sun's out, getting stuff done out in the yard. You know, it's I love it. I love it. So, well, we've got some exciting topics today here on Prosper in the Kingdom. And this actually came out of a conversation I had with a viewer 2 weeks ago, just talking about the constant struggle, right, of the middle class. You know, things are going up in prices. You know, we've got the situation going on with Iran, so we're seeing it at the tank, the gas pump, and it's making a challenge. But, you know, pull back, look at the big picture. Things are going fairly well other than the expense piece. But, you know, what we're really talking about today is just the challenges that middle class have in building wealth, right? And so what we're going to talk about today is why the middle class stays broke and the wealthy don't, right? How are they always figuring out how they're always staying ahead? And so that's really kind of a deep dive topic about what we're going to be discussing today here on Prosper in the Kingdom. So
yeah, people will say that the rich keep getting richer. Well, there's a reason.
Right? I like that little whininess too that you had in your voice, because it's accurate. No, it's accurate. And it's really, honestly, it's all about mindset. And, you know, again, we've said this once, we've said it 1,000 times on the show. You know, they don't teach us about money in schools, right? Especially if you're a public school kid like I am. And, you know, my opinion, that's by design, because they want you just simply going out making more money so they can tax the hell out of you to pay for all the pet projects. And the reality of it is, and I want you to hear me on this, and you can disagree with me, that's fine, but I want you to hear me out, keep an open mind. Most people, speaking about middle class, middle America, most people don't have an income problem. Okay. What they have is a money behavior problem. Okay. A money behavior problem. And again, that shifts over to mindset, right? How do you look at money? And we talk about it from a biblical basis, you know, as far as being a good steward and things like that. And as a Christian, you know, you want to follow what the biblical text says about your money. But, you know, you think about it, you can make 75,000, 100,000, even 200,000 and still feel like you're stuck, like you're in this hamster wheel, this grind, right? And the reality is the why behind that is because money comes in and immediately goes out, right? And here's what I mean by that. And I want you to hear me on this, right? Middle class, what do? They spend their money. They get it, they spend it, they buy stuff, you know, boats, cars, whatever the case, that lifestyle piece. Wealthy people deploy money. So middle class spends money, wealthy deploy money. Okay, same income. And you can be wealthy at 75 income, 100 income, 200K income or more, obviously. So it's not the income that builds wealth, it's what you do with it. That's that mindset, right? So again, that same income, completely different outcome. So today we're going to kind of break down this shift and show you where people get stuck, okay? And then obviously how to fix it using the 3M framework, you know, make, manage, and multiply that we talk about so much.
Yeah. I totally lost my train of thought. I was going to say something and I just literally disappeared. But anyway, you know, talking to people and families, they a lot of times just run on autopilot with their money, right? They're not, I can count on one hand and the people I talk to a month that actually have a spending plan, like know what their money's doing. Some people track once it's gone, but nobody's really that we talk to on a regular basis is being really intentional. Like there's very few and far between who are being intentional. And so what happens is money comes out or comes in, extra money, and it's immediately assigned to some kind of lifestyle upgrade. Yeah. I mean, and I'm 100% guilty of this in my past. If I got a raise at work, I looked at, what's my monthly income now going to be? And then I was like, what can I add to expenses?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, those that are out there listening, how many of you are like, kind of same, right?
Well, that's middle class. That's what we do, right?
Yeah. So bills, we add on, now I can buy this every month instead, or we upgrade the car, or we say, now I can take that vacation, or I deserve this spending.
Yes.
And think about it. Like, people might be excited about a $5,000 a year raise, which is $400 a month, right? But instead of doing what the wealthy do and saying, how do I build an asset with that extra $400 a month? That typically becomes what? Like, this first thing that pops in your head listening to this. Let's upgrade my car. Now I can afford a $400 a month car payment.
Yep. Right? And FYI, peeps, a car is not an asset. I know what's the value of your car when you're looking at and a car is not an asset. Assets generate income. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, it feels like, I'm making more, but nothing changes in the financial landscape because all you're doing is being a consumer and spending more. So income goes up, lifestyle goes up. What we want to look at is margin, which is the difference between the two. And unfortunately, in the middle class, it doesn't matter how much money you make, that margin stays flat, right? Because it just becomes paycheck to paycheck, just at a higher level. We have all heard people say broke at different levels, right? Everybody's broke at different levels. No, the wealthy mindset people are not broke at a different level because they know what to do with their money. And that's our passion. What we care about sharing with people is how to actually start thinking like an investor and thinking like, someone that is wealthy, that's going to create, like John said, assets that generate income instead of just spending it on more crap. Like, I'm going to just go on a rant for a second and then I'll pass back.
Preach.
I think social media is the worst thing in a long time for middle-class America because it has turned us into a bunch of crazy consumers that think you always, like, I will not do, a lot of ladies are like making money on TikTok Shop. As someone that wants to teach people about money, I've had people say, Wendy, you should do TikTok Shop. I will not do TikTok Shop because all it does is promote instant gratification and consumer behavior that is driving people into debt and ruining their entire lives. And I'm not blaming TikTok Shop for ruining people's lives, but we're in this social media age where we see it's keeping up with the Joneses on freaking steroids because you see what everyone else has and you see all these fake, by the way, before and afters and these fake ads. So I just learned about an app that I can get paid $20 for every little 20-second video that I make, which is super cool, right? Guess what, guys? It's making up ads and giving testimonials that aren't even real. None of the crap you see is real. Okay. That's my rant.
It's reality. I mean, it's, and that's the thing, everybody sees this fake stuff. And I was actually talking about something this weekend with regards to, you go to different towns. I love road trips, right? And I'm going to go off course a little bit here, but you go to all these different towns and a lot of the same restaurants, the same stores, or all these, or in all these different towns, these different communities. And my thought is, oh my gosh, we've become, they're no longer hometowns anymore. We've got the mom and pop hardware store and this, that, or the other. It's local consumer societies is what we become. And these conglomerates come in and dump their stores because they know we're going to purchase stuff from them. And that's all we are. We go and work, we go to their stores, buy the stuff, and it goes on and on. And, you hit it on the head with regards to, you get a raise and we start thinking monthly payment. You go out and buy something and you put it on your credit card or finance or whatever the case may be. And the newness has already worn off and you're still making those payments, which means going back to your immediate gratification from TikTok, things like that, you get that fix, that endorphin rush from buying something new. People are like, oh my gosh, nice new car, nice new house. And then all of a sudden, you're into it for a year or so, and it's like the newness is worn off, but yet you're still making the payment. So now you want to go out and do it again. And that's the thing. It's this ugly cycle where you feel like, you're making progress, but in reality, nothing has changed. You've got income coming in and you blow it. You don't deploy it, you spend it before, anything happens. And, what do I mean by that? Spending versus deploying? Because aren't they the same thing? Well, no, not at all. Right. And here's what I mean by that. So every dollar that comes in has two paths that it can take for you. One is consumed, right? Think of a bird eating the seed, right? Rather than going out and planting a garden where they eat the seed. So it's gone forever. Okay. Maybe you had some fun, took some pictures, whatever, made a post on social media. Everybody look at me. And then the other one is deployed. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, that where it can actually return, that money can return you. Deployed meaning, okay, hey, I sell, something and I turn around or get an increase in my pay and I, turn around and rather spend it on lifestyle or crap or whatever, blow it, right? I turn around and deploy it, whether it's an investment strategy or, hey, I'm buying land or something like that, or a short-term rental, a rental property. I love real estate, right? Buying crypto or something like that. Again, creating assets and building wealth. And the problem is, or I guess it's not a problem, but the reality is spending is emotional, right? That's why they put all those kiosks, the cash register at every major department store has tons of stuff around you, while you're waiting in line for you to buy from an emotional standpoint, right? It's like, oh, I need it. I deserve it. You said that earlier, right? And it's immediate gratification. You feel good. Oh, I earned this, so I'm going to buy this new purse or these new shoes, right? But what happens is it creates zero future income. You've eaten your seed, right? Deployment is intentional, meaning, okay, hey, I'm going to deploy X amount of my income towards wealth building. I'm going to deploy X amount of my income towards acquiring, income generating assets like real estate or whatever the case may be. And it's strategic, right? Meaning it's a little longer term than the immediate gratification. But the big bonus, the big result is that ultimately creates an income stream for you. A little more immediate is, short-term rentals, things like that, rental properties. But even investments, those investments, it's not about the investment itself. It's what is that going to generate for you in income through the annual growth where you can take proceeds or, the interest or whatever the case may be, right? And so let me give you some simple math here. Here's a quick example of what I mean. So let's say that, going back to your pay raise, right? So I'm going to use $500. So if I get $500 a month in a pay raise and I spend it, right? I put it, I go out and buy a new car because I deserve it or whatever the case may be, or I, upgrade my house and I'm like, hey, now I can afford a new house. So we're going to get that bigger house in a better neighborhood or whatever, the look at me neighborhood. And
or now I can buy that $280 skincare system.
Well, there you go, right? There's a lot of that, especially on the female side. So I spend that, it's gone. Okay. Whereas if I deploy that $500 a month over time, it becomes an income producing asset. So the difference isn't the $500. It's still the same, right? It's $500 either way. It's what that $500 could have become. Okay. What could it have become? So stop asking yourself what I can buy, right? With your money, your additional money coming in, or it doesn't even have to be an increase in income. Let's just say you increase your margin by paying off your bills, things like that. Again, thinking of this in a whole different light. Instead of asking yourself, what can I buy? Ask yourself, what can this produce for me? What can this $500 produce for me? Because again, spending feels good today. Deployment changes your future. And that's the hard, cold reality of it. And that's where wealthy people have realized it. And folks, most people, especially in America today, didn't start out wealthy. They got there through mindset, right? Through strategic, consistent activity, consistent action, and denying themselves today the frivolous spending in order to build wealth, not only for themselves, and then they teach their kids this as well. And that's what we're trying to do here at Prosper in the Kingdom, is teach you how to shift your mindset, because we make plenty of money in America. And I know some people are going to push back on that. And I'm not saying every single person, but the vast majority of us, our level of poverty in America is still wealthier than most nations out there. Yep. Okay. So I want you to understand this. So the reality of it is, okay, if we're making money and we're making, quote unquote, plenty of money, what am I doing wrong? And it goes back to this mindset of spending versus deploying, right? And quite frankly, that's why the wealthy win. because they treat the income as a seed. You've heard me say this a lot, not a reward. Okay. It's a seed, not a reward. You're going to turn around. And like I said, you're going to deploy that into real estate. Another thing I love is buying businesses, right? There are a lot of different businesses out there for sale or starting a business, right? We have an affiliate path with us where people come in and they're building a business and, they're generating a revenue. That financial strategies, we talk all the time about how to deploy and build wealth, not just retirement, but wealth. The whole point is to be able to access that money in your 40s, 50s, and 60s so you can do what? Turn around and deploy even more of it rather than just waiting in your 70s and 80s. Because if you think about it, that's really what retirement is you're going into spending mode from your assets. Now, hopefully you've built enough where you're not spending down the actual assets. But unfortunately, that's what most people end up doing, right? And so what happens, you get into this cycle of wealth, and it almost becomes like a game, which is very, very fun, right? You generate income or incomes, plural, right? You acquire assets that generate even more income, and then you redeploy again. So you look at it, it's almost like, Monopoly, if you will, on steroids. I don't know if you guys have heard of Robert Kiyosaki, the game Cash Flow. Have you played that, Wendy?
I've not played it, no.
Oh, it's an amazing game, and it teaches this stuff on a very, simple level. So I would highly encourage if you, go pick up the board game Cash Flow. I played it for years, and when my kids were small, I'm talking like elementary age, we were playing that with them because it's a great way to teach about this mindset shift of, building assets and incomes rather than just buying and spending, right? Deployment versus spending. So let's take two people that earn $100,000. Okay. So let's say person A spends their margin, their extra, and let's say person B deploys $1,000 a month. Okay. So fast forward over 10 to 15 years. Okay. One has nicer stuff. I mean, they got the flashy cars, they're getting new cars all the time. They're buying the clothes, things like that. They're going out to dinner, and buying rounds for their friends. So they're living that flashy lifestyle, right? And then the other has built income producing assets. Okay. So the thing to remember, and I guess this is the key point, is wealth is built through repetition and consistency, right? Repetition, not the big win. Okay. And the prime example of this, and we've all heard this before, somebody wins the lottery. Within a few short years, they're typically filing bankruptcy. Okay. Why? Because they don't understand how money works. They start spending it down, supporting their entourage. You look at who's the guy, MC Hammer, right? He made massive money. And you see this with athletes. You see this with other, famous people that had, their 15 minutes of fame where they make a lot of money and then all of a sudden they're broke years later, is because they don't understand that mindset of deploying versus spending. A great example is Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal. That guy is a deployer. I mean, zero doubt that guy's building assets, and he's still making plenty of money today beyond what he did in basketball. But again, the wealthy don't just make money; they make money. Get that money to work for you.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying about if you deploy the money, you create those income producing assets. And the piece here is the one who just has more stuff still has the same bills and still has to make the same income. Whereas the one who created the income producing assets gets to work less and still live that same lifestyle. So, and then those assets, there's compounding. So over time, it gets bigger and bigger. So, most people focus just on that, hey, I've got to make more money, but fail in that manage piece of controlling cash flow and creating the margin. Like we're going to be talking about that over and over, is you want to create the margin, meaning do not increase the lifestyle with the income. And you have to make that decision that not every dollar is to spend, right? I mean, I know mindset, because I have this mindset, you guys. I have to be intentional to switch it. But, in my brain, anytime I've had an increase in income, it's like, oh, what can I do now extra for myself, rather than building the assets. And it's been, years of work to switch that mindset and realize, but once you start doing it and you can start to see the effects of it, it's gonna, like John said, it becomes like a game, right? Like you have more and more fun with it. So, but you've got to make the start. And if you don't manage your money well, you're not going to be able to deploy any of that money. And if you don't deploy any money, nothing multiplies. And the multiply piece is what's going to get you to the future that you want, right? And so you cannot multiply money, the seed that you eat, right? Like John talks about eating the seed. You can't multiply seed you eat. You have to plant it. And that's what we're called to do as stewards, is to plant it, not to, we live in a selfish world, man. The enemy, I'm just being real. The enemy comes in with this stuff that we think is innocent, and it's not. It's selfish. If you're spending every dollar that you make, I understand a little bit, right? Some people have lost incomes. I know a lot of people that have lost major incomes and stuff. And I know for me, in my own experience, right, when I was making really good money in network marketing, and then all of a sudden it shifted and my checks were cut in half, it was my fault that I increased my lifestyle to the extent that I was making the money, that I wasn't prepared for it to be cut in half, right? And so stop. Don't do it. Start being intentional with your money. Get a financial plan. Know where your money's going. And, we need to grow up.
Well, and that's kind of the reality of the whole 3M framework, right? I mean, we're trying to teach people how to, make more income, and not just increasing the income, but increasing the margin. That's key, right? Increasing that bottom line to you. But then what do you do to do it, right? You turn around, and are you spending it or are you deploying it? And that's, again, the conversation I had, it was like this light bulb that went off. It's like, okay, why early in my life was I struggling? Because I was spending. I was doing exactly what you were just talking about. I was going out, buying the newer car, buying the stuff, going out more and stuff like that, because I wanted to look the part. And, what I realized is you do that for a period of years, and all of a sudden you start to really struggle for the simple fact that you're eating all of your seeds. So you're never going to have a large, bountiful garden, if you will, to the crop, so to speak. And that's your wealth, not just retirement, but wealth. I want, think of Matthew 25, right? Matthew 25, if you haven't if you haven't been in your Bible for a while, dive into that one. That's the parable of the talents. And we've referenced that a few times on the show. And go through and understand what the message of that parable is, right? The ones who multiplied, right, were rewarded. Okay. And it's not just about building wealth for wealth's sake. It's about the freedom. God intended you to be free. Okay. God did not intend you to be a wage slave or a slave to consumerism or things like that. He wants you to be free to go out and further the kingdom and help expand the kingdom, by blessing others, by making sure you're doing your tithes and things like that. The ones who multiplied were rewarded by their master. The one who did nothing lost everything. Okay. And to much is given, much is expected. So keep that in the back of your mind as well. But again, your takeaway from this is you are called to multiply, not just maintain. Okay. And by just maintaining and spending what little bonuses or whatever that you get, you're keeping that stress level high, and you're never going to get out of that cycle. And your kids are watching you, and they're going to do the exact same thing because they don't know any better, because they're watching mom and dad and what they do. And that's what they're going to grow up. And nobody wants that. Right. So, again, you're called to multiply, not just to maintain. So here's a challenge. Okay. Remind yourself that every dollar you make, every single dollar you make, okay, forces a decision. Is this building my future or funding my present? Okay, is this building my future or funding my present? When we go through our financial reviews with our clients on their personal plans, I always ask them, are the purchases you're making, they moving you closer to or further away from your financial goals? Okay, whatever those may be. And you've got to think about that again with every single dollar, and just remind yourself, the middle class spends money, period. The wealthy deploy money. Over time, that's a difference that determines everything. Okay. And you've got to ask yourself that hard question: which one do I want to be?
Yeah.
Do I want to be the middle-class person struggling on the hamster wheel, always trying to, check to check? Maybe you've got a little bit of the look of success, prosperity, but reality is, what would happen if you lost your income? What would happen if you were forced to retire today, right? Are you even going to be able to retire? Are you building wealth? Are you building legacy wealth? And those are the things that you got to ask yourself. But the big news is, it's not too late, right? You can make that change. All right. Now is better than never. And over time, like I said, that difference is everything. So, final close on this. If you need help in this, get with a financial planner who's got a holistic approach. If you don't have one, we would love to show you what we do. Go to safemoneyroadmap.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Get a free financial plan. Do something with it or not. That's fine. That's just our gift to you for helping support the show. And start deploying your money, not just spending it, right? And also, it takes nothing for you guys to help us out with the show a little bit. Give us some love. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to us on our podcast, give us a 5-star review. And then also on both avenues, share this with your friends and family. Again, we've got a lot of different material out there, all designed to help you make more margin, manage it better, be good stewards from a biblical perspective, and then obviously multiply that, again, thinking back to Matthew 25, the parable of talents. So anything else to add to that, Wendy?
Get your financial plan. Let's go.
Yeah. Quit playing small ball, guys. Let's do this. Let's do this for the kingdom and watch what happens over the next few years. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for Prospering the Kingdom. We hope you got something out of this episode. Like I said, give us some love, like, and share, and we'll see you next week on another Prospering the Kingdom. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.